Howdy, my name is Bill Robertson. I live at 636 Hemlock Street, Florence, Oregon, which is on the other side of that fence there. And 20 years ago, this was my backyard, city property. And recently, workers in this alley have killed this 50-foot eucalyptus tree, which is on the other side of the fence right there. And this video is about what it's like living next door to city property and why us property owners need to band together and change the code. We need a Bill of Rights. We need protection. So, my story is this: 20 years ago, this was a big landscape mound here. It was mature rhododendrons and other shrubs and a dawn redwood. It was at least 15 yards of topsoil piled in here. The fence wasn't there, and this area here was just the end of the backyard from that house there. So one night I saw the neighbor from over here, the previous neighbor, standing out here, and I came out to talk to him, and he said that tomorrow, the next day, he was going to plow all this down, all this stuff down, and because he went to the city and the city said nobody owned it. So he didn't bother to come over and tell me or talk to me about it. In fact, I had my tractor over there, and I could have moved this stuff out of there and saved it, but I had to be at work the next day, and I just figured dealing with the city was going to take months if it and wouldn't accomplish anything, which is the truth. And so, just went to work the next day, and he plowed all this down to the end there, and I came back and built this fence. And then the next thing is that he parked a motorhome over here next to the fence. He told me that he thought that was the best place for me, that was the most out of the way place for me to park his motorhome. And there was a guy living in there, and being in the motorhome, it's higher than the fence. You could see over into the backyard, into the back windows of our house. So he lived in there for a year. Twice, I caught the previous code enforcer down here at the street, and I said, what about that motorhome back there? They can't be living back there. And I quote, he said, well, I'm pretty busy. I don't know when I'll get around to that. So before that, I had been moving with a horse trailer. I caught the flu. It was pouring down rain, and I parked in the street on the front of this house one evening. By the next morning when I went out there was a sticker on my trailer saying it was going to be towed away. So when we finally got this motorhome out of here, I parked my trailer right in there one evening, and the next morning I walked out here and there was a tag on that saying it was going to be towed away. And I'm tired of being threatened from parking back here. People saying they're going to tow my stuff away. I'm not in anybody's way. And legally, you can't stop anybody from parking back here because you let that guy live here for a year. And once you let one person break the law, you can't apply the law to anybody else. Okay, so now that was 20 years ago, and last December, that would be 2023, some guys came here. They were going to clean up the mess in this yard back here. You see, what happened is the city told the previous owner here that he couldn't be parking all of his derelict junk in his front yard. Okay, so that's why he came back here and plowed all this away so he could drive back here and put all that junk in his backyard. And he could have just come here and plowed, through here and left all that, but there was so much junk over here that he plowed the whole thing away so he could come down here to this end and get in here where there wasn't quite so much junk. Okay, so I put a bucket here to represent a willow tree that was living here. And when they plowed all this stuff down here, they left a mature cherry tree down here. Put this bucket down here where that was. Okay, so we plowed all this stuff out, and we built this fence. We planted all these trees along here. Okay, but and then when they were getting ready to sell this house, they wanted to get rid of all this junk back here, and so they hired somebody to come in here and haul all this junk away. Well, they dug this willow tree out, and I didn't know they were going to do this. They had no right to do this. They had no reason to do this, but they came down here and tore out this cherry tree. Okay, so there's this eucalyptus tree on the other side of the fence. That's what? Less than 15 feet there. This is, maybe 30 feet here to this tree. So it was pouring down rain, and they got this backhoe in here and tore this whole area up, all right? And they were slip sliding around in here, and just driving around in it, they were sinking like knee deep in here. So this just turned into a big swamp, okay? So, and there was no reason to tear out that cherry tree down there. So, when you turn something into that much mud, it will not support roots. It vibrates the ground, and it's wet, it's lubricated, and it packs so tight there's no air left in it. And they couldn't get set up, obviously, so they brought in sand in here, dumped in here, and we build on sand here because it packs the 95% of its space. There's no air in there. There's no air to the roots on this side of this tree, okay? And the other thing that keeps trees from blowing over is their roots go out and entangle with other trees, like the one that used to be there and the one that used to be here, okay? So on this side over here, there's no support for this tree, and the roots are all rotting away under there, okay? So when we get a good windstorm, there's nothing keeping it from blowing over that way. And my house is over there, and I'm pretty sure this tree will reach that far, and it'll land on a mature landscape in the backyard, okay? So let's see. I caught the new owner out here that bought this house, and I came out to meet him, and he had got the code guy to come over and threaten me with, because my car's parked back here. So I came over to ask him, so, well, what's the problem with, parking along the fence here? And he said, and I quote, "If you park back here, I'll have your car towed to where you'll never be able to find it again." So you got 20-foot wide alley here, okay? So you got 20 feet wide, and he wants to build a garage in there, fine. And he wants to be able to get in it. You need 20 feet to get in and out of there? There's a few miles from here up in the mountains, there are one-lane roads where logging trucks are passing each other, and they don't need 20 feet. And you're telling me that parking over here is going to obstruct him in any way? You kind of wonder, maybe he shouldn't be, parking in regular parking lots either. And I said, well, what about if I park down here at the end here? That's not going to block anything. And he said, well, he might want to knock this alley on through here someday so he can drive in from 7th Street down there. And I said, well, wait a minute. You have all of this access from 6th Street, and you want to blow away all this stuff here in this person's yard, these two sheds, and you want to take this alley right up next to that house? And he said, well, it might be nice to be able to drive in from both sides sometime. And I'm sure that most people are thinking, well, I was never going to do that. But here's the thing. That's exactly what happened over here 20 years ago to me. And about 6 blocks from here, there's another situation exactly like this, where some guy's talking about blowing through some people's side yard where they've got a greenhouse and flower beds and stuff. And the reason he wants to do that is because there's some limbs hanging over his house, and he wants to be able to drive his big toy in there, his 50-foot boom truck, and to take those limbs down, when all he's got to do is, get up on the roof and cut them down, you know? So this tree is dying. Okay, I was really hoping it wasn't, and I've been waiting till the last minute to do anything about it. But I'll show you what's going on. This ladder is my exercise for my arthritic knees. It's the best exercise I found, is climbing this ladder. Okay, so here's the trunk. Okay, this is the bark. This is where the bark fell off. Here's a big chunk here. Okay, now this black stuff, this shouldn't be black. This should be tan or green or something. It should be soft. This is the cambium layer. This is the living part of the trunk, or was. Okay, this thin layer here grows inward to produce more trunk, and outward to make, you know, more cambium and to make the bark. So this bark is just, you know, falling off of here, and, you know, it's like, you know, it's, okay, so this trunk is a little over 9 foot in circumference, right here, okay? And the parts that are dead, where the bark's fallen off, you can see a little bit right there, adds up to, well, let's say the parts that are living add up to about 3.5 feet. So that's like 2/3 of this, the bark around this tree is dead and fallen off. It's worse on the back side. It's just, you know, it's just peeling off. So, now, taking this tree down is going to be a massive, major operation. I came in here and I took 12 feet off of this limb because it's hanging over my neighbor's. So I can back up. Okay, so I took 12 feet off of this limb, and in order to take it off, I had to throw a rope over the limb above it and tie off one piece at a time, cut it off, and then lower it down here and lower it around, you know, mature plants and stuff, because this is all a mature landscape in here. In fact, those two rhododendrons there a couple of years ago were $50 a piece, and the whole place is like that. So I gotta tie up all these limbs and drop them or cut them off a piece at a time. Now, this one 12-foot section of limb here filled up my mini pickup truck, and it weighed 780 pounds because I took it to the dump, and it cost me $28 just the end of that one limb. Okay, so this is going to be one massive operation, and I'm going to have to tie up all these limbs, you know, a piece at a time, and lower them, you know, down, well, down around all this stuff. Oh my God. You know, this is one of the trees that we planted 20 years ago to block off this back fence area from the neighbor. Now, this thing rains. Nobody wants this tree because it doesn't make good firewood. You can't burn it, I guess. Can't split it, that's for sure. But it rains this twigs. And right now, I get about enough of these twigs, I can almost get enough kindling. It's really good kindling to get me through the winter. But lately, it's just raining twigs like crazy. The trees are full of them. The ground's full of them. You know, I just picked this whole area up about 2 weeks ago. You know, it's just raining this stuff. And a couple of people have come over, and as soon as they see this tree, they ask, well, what's wrong with that tree? You know, because it does look kind of like it's wilty and droopy, and, you know. So, this is what you're risking living next door to city property, okay? So the guy went over here and he said, well, you know, he went to the city, and the city said nobody owned it. And the city won't take any responsibility for anything that goes on here. So basically, you can come in here, you can do anything you want to, and there's no way to hold anybody responsible. So, and the thing about it is that I spent 2 months recently trying to track down whoever was in charge of whether or not they had needed a permit for back here. Do you need a permit to work in the alley? And if you do you have to notify the property owners around it? And if you don't get a permit, what happens then? Well, it turns out that, yep, you need a permit. No, you don't have to tell anybody what you're going to do. And if you don't get a permit, there's nothing the city's going to do to you. And the city's not going to be responsible for any damage that you do back here. Okay? You can just come in here and destroy whatever they want to. So, my idea is this, and I'm going to put this on YouTube because you can put your comments in here. You can put your ideas. You can put your horror stories. You know, you can put your ideas. And I think as property owners, we need to take control of this, and we need a Bill of Rights. We need some property rights. You know, people shouldn't be able to come in here and do what they want to do. Okay? And I don't see where anybody needs 20 feet wide access. You know, seems like 10 feet wide is plenty. Now, and, you know, now, let's talk about this fire hazard, because that's going to be a fire hazard pretty soon when it starts to die. But a lot of people think that all this shrubbery here and stuff and these trees are a fire hazard, but they're not. Anybody who's tried to burn green brush will know you can't burn it. You have to boil all the water away first. This is a great firewall here. It's a wall of water. In fact, about 3 weeks ago, there was a lady interviewed on PBS News, and she stayed in her house in the Maui fire. And her house was surrounded by this kind of green stuff. Okay? So, and the other thing is that if you have plants around your house, it keeps your house 10 degrees cooler in the summertime and 10 degrees warmer in the wintertime. Okay? So, I'll tell you what's going to be a real fire hazard. I've been in the forest fire, the Asta fire. I lived right in the middle of it, and I just stayed there. I mean, anyway. But I've also been in grass fires. And in a couple of years, this grass is going to build up a layer of thatch underneath it. And in the later summer, somebody throws a match in that or a cigarette, and that fire will spread as fast as you can walk in every single direction. And you try to catch up to that. But this is my firewall. Because what burns in neighborhoods is not the green living stuff. It's all the flammable stuff in people's houses and garages. So, this is going to be a massive, major undertaking. It's going to be thousands of dollars taking this tree down. Okay? So, I think we need to band together. I think we need to change the code. to what protects us as property rights. You know, if you look at the code, it looks like it was just copied from maybe Eugene or Portland or somewhere. Okay, they want to pave this eventually. You know, they want Eugene here. They want a big paved parking lot with houses and stores and buildings sticking out of it. Well, these are not houses. These are our homes. These are the major investment of our lives. Okay? And there's absolutely no reason to punch through here. Marius lived there for 50 years. And there's absolutely no reason to punch this alley through there. But it's not legally her property because the city came along once upon a time and drew some lines on a map and said, hey, everybody, look what I did. I made an alley. You know, God. Besides, there was no alley here. You know, my house, Maria's house, and the one on the corner over there were built in the 1950s. There was no alley here. It was a swamp. Well, they call it a lake. But, you know, so I don't know when these alleys were drawn in here or what compensation they gave anybody. But this is ridiculous. My idea is this. Every single block in Florence should write up their own code for the alleys. You know what? You shouldn't have, one size never fits all. Okay? And furthermore, if you need access into somebody's property, you already have it 10 feet wide is plenty. And anybody can't get in and out of 10 feet wide ought to lose their driver's license. So, and I believe that we ought to have a buffer along our properties where we have the right to say what goes on. Now that would be, you know, written up is going to be a little complicated. But furthermore, I think if we all get together in every block and we decide on, you know, what the code's going to be for our block, that one sociopathic bully like the guy that's living here now shouldn't be able to block, you know, what we want to do. We should have some way to define what's reasonable, okay? Is it reasonable that I can't park along here or at the end? Is it reasonable that he blows through all this stuff down there? Now, the options that Maria's thinking about maybe buying that to protect it, well, why should she have to pay the city to fix a problem the city created? And somewhere in the code, 700 pages of code in there, the code enforcer says that if you buy a piece of property, you've got to pave it. Well, why would you buy it if you got to pave it? So, you know, this is a little bit ridiculous. So, we need a way to define what is a reasonable objection. We need property rights. We need to be able to protect our property from people like this that just want to, you know, they just want to destroy everything in sight. You know, there was no reason whatsoever to tear out that cherry tree down there, okay? But what they did do is by making this a wasteland here, they made it match the backyard. So it looks like that this is an extension of his backyard. Okay, so he gets what he wants, and I can't even park back here, and you know, Mari's got to worry about losing all that. This is obscene. So I'm going to put this on YouTube. I went to talk to the city at the city council meeting, found out you could only talk to them for 3 minutes. Doesn't seem like they're really interested in, you know, hearing from any of us. So I made this video to explain the problem. I'm going to go put a letter to the editor in the newspaper and publicize this. And what I'll do is at the bottom of this video in the description, I'll put in there when I get this all done when I'm going to go talk to the city, and anybody that wants to go talk to them for 3 minutes can go down and talk to them. You have to uh, fill out a form. I think it's at least an hour before. You can do it online if you want to. I think it's a little bit absurd that Florence is designated as a tree city when they're going to destroy this tree because they don't want to be responsible for anything. So